Hello again, friends. Last week I asked you the question of whether you live in the life and power of the apostles and disciples. I hope that question brings you comfort and disruption, just as it has me over the last several months as I've been thinking about it. For friends, this idea of living in this life and power arises in part from our experience and understanding of the inward light of Christ that's available in each person. We'd say generally that Jesus is this historical figure, the person who incarnates God in the flesh. But also using the idea that comes from John 1, we also believe that Christ is somehow present in each person, that light that gives light to every person. That there's this presence or spark of God that is available to everyone, that's just waiting to be kindled into this inferno of faith, if we're willing to receive it, to nurture it, and to abide in that life and power. Historically, a number of friends have said that the inward light of Christ shows up especially in three distinct ways in our life. One is as a source of truth, the other is as a source of power, and finally as a source of unity. I want to talk about those three over the next several weeks, but today I want to focus just for a minute on this idea of being a source of truth. It's common for friends to say that part of our expression of faith is to always tell the truth. And nowadays, especially, you'll hear that we are called to be people who speak truth to power. And both of those are absolutely right. But I think it starts with this willingness to allow the truth to speak to us, to allow God to pierce our lives, to examine our lives, to reveal those shadow places in our lives, that the hidden racism, the pride, the envy, our addictions, our sin, the lusts that keep us from being whole. Not so it leaves us wallowing in shame and regret and guilt, but rather as this sort of doorway to being healed and to being reconciled and being made whole. Early on in my experience of faith, of being a Christian, it sort of communicated to me that God does this experience in your life and then you're done. This sort of legal status has changed. You've gone from being a sinner to a saint, or there's this sort of mechanical process that happens. And yet my experience of it was much more relational, that God was actually this person who wanted to be known and loved and wanted to be engaged in a way that allowed for this growth and maturity over time. So along the way, I read this really interesting book by Mother Teresa, who talked about one of her spiritual practices was to, at regular intervals in her life, was to simply open herself up to God and say, is there anything in my life that you would want to change? And she told these different stories of God at the right time when she was open to it, in often gentle, but often strong ways, saying, this is something that I, in fact, do want you to change about the way you relate to others or your attitude toward the world or that sort of thing. As I'm reading this, I'm thinking, well, gee, if Mother Teresa needs that, maybe I do too. And so it began for me this willingness to allow truth to be spoken into my life, and to allow this severe mercy, if you will, to come in and help me begin to see some of the many things that are a result of my brokenness and woundedness, of these places in my life that get in a way of an intimate relationship with God or a healthy relationship with other people. And so I want to encourage you, as you think about walking in that life and power, that you take some time this week to open yourself up to the wonderfully healing and disrupting truth of God as it's spoken into your life. God bless you as you do it. And again, share your comments in the section below.